The minute hand on my watch read 37 when it happened. I was fumbling with my apartment key, the metal slick with January cold, when my headphone cord somehow twisted itself around the door handle. One sharp tug backward, and the entire mess, keys, headphones, and my dignity, went tumbling to the hallway floor with a metallic clatter that echoed off the narrow walls of my Lincoln Park building. I froze, crouched there gathering the tangled mess, hoping nobody had heard. The last thing I needed was Mrs. Chen from 3B peering out to see what the commotion was about. But instead of Mrs. Chen's curious face, I heard something else entirely. The soft creak of a door opening behind me. "Everything all right there?" The voice was warm, tinged with concern and something else I couldn't quite place. I turned, still crouched awkwardly on the scuffed linoleum, and found myself looking up at a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe 5 or 6 years older than my 33, with salt and pepper hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it, and eyes that seemed to hold entire conversations I wasn't privy to. He wore a faded sweater the color of storm clouds, and there was something about the way he stood in his doorway, like he was perpetually on the verge of retreating back inside. "Yeah, just—" I held up the tangled cord, feeling heat creep up my neck despite the cold. "Modern technology and all." He smiled then, and it transformed his entire face. Not a polite neighbor smile, but something genuine and slightly amused. "Those things have a mind of their own, don't they?" He stepped out into the hallway, and I caught a whiff of coffee and something else. Cedar, maybe. Or old books. "I'm Alex, by the way. Just moved into 4A last month." Julian. I finally managed to untangle my key from the mess and stood up, brushing dust off my knees. 4C. I guess we're neighbors. Guess so. There was a pause, not quite awkward but charged with the particular energy of two people who suddenly find themselves in unexpected proximity. "You're the one who plays piano, aren't you? I hear it sometimes in the evenings. It's really beautiful, actually." I felt something flutter in my chest that I immediately tried to suppress. "Sorry if it's too loud." I try to keep it down after 10. No, please don't apologize. It's the best part of coming home some nights." He said this with such quiet sincerity that I had to look away, focusing instead on finally getting my key into the lock. "You're really talented." "Thanks." The word came out smaller than I intended. I wasn't used to compliments, especially not from strangers who looked at me like they actually meant what they said. Most people in my building treated each other like polite ghosts, acknowledging existence with brief nods and careful smiles that never reached their eyes. "Listen," Alex said, and I could hear him shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "This might sound weird, but do you want to get coffee sometime? I mean, if you're not too busy with music things." I turned back to face him, my hand still on the doorknob. He was looking at me with a combination of hope and resignation, like he was already preparing for rejection. There was something familiar about that expression, something that made my chest tighten with recognition. "Coffee," I repeated, as if testing the word. "There's this little place called Brew and Bean about 3 blocks down on Lincoln. Nothing fancy, but they make a decent latte, and it's usually quiet enough to actually have a conversation." He was talking faster now, the way people do when they're nervous. "I know we don't really know each other, but I'm still pretty new to the city, and I thought maybe—" "I'd like that," I said, cutting him off before he could talk himself out of the invitation. "Coffee, I mean. That sounds nice." The relief that crossed his face was so profound it made something ache in my chest. When was the last time someone had looked at me like that? Like my saying yes actually mattered? Really? He smiled again, that same genuine expression that seemed to light up the dingy hallway. "Great. How about tomorrow afternoon? I work from home mostly, so I'm pretty flexible." "Tomorrow works. I teach until 3, but after that I'm free." I paused, realizing how long it had been since I'd made plans with anyone who wasn't paying me to play piano or teach their kids scales. "Should we say 4 o'clock?" 4 is perfect. Alex took a step back toward his door, but he didn't seem in any hurry to disappear. It's a date. I mean, not a date, just... He ran a hand through that already disheveled hair. You know what I mean. I found myself smiling. Actually smiling, for the first time in weeks. I know what you mean. We stood there for another moment, neither of us quite ready to break whatever spell had settled over the hallway. Finally, Alex cleared his throat. Well, I should let you get inside. Long day and all. Yeah. I turned my key in the lock, but before I could open the door, I found myself looking back at him. Alex? Yeah? Thanks. For asking, I mean. It's been a while since anyone wanted to get coffee with me. His expression softened. It's been a while since I wanted to get coffee with anyone. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. We exchanged one more smile before I finally pushed open my door and stepped inside, closing it softly behind me. I stood there for a moment, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hall, the soft click of his door closing. My apartment felt different somehow, smaller, maybe, or just lonelier by comparison. I set my keys on the small table by the door and unwound my scarf, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger, no, a neighbor, had asked me to coffee. More than that, he'd listened to me play piano and liked it enough to mention it, to use it as a reason to talk to me. I walked over to my upright piano, the one piece of furniture in the place that felt truly mine. My fingers found the keys without conscious thought, picking out a soft melody that matched my mood. Cautious but hopeful, like the first few notes of a song you can't quite remember but know you've been humming all your life. The next afternoon, I found myself standing outside Brew and Bean 10 minutes early, second-guessing everything about my appearance. I'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a navy sweater that didn't make me look completely washed out. My hair was doing something strange in the back, but I'd run out of time to fix it. Through the window, I could see Alex already sitting at a small table near the back, 2 steaming mugs in front of him. He was reading something on his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration, and I took a moment to really look at him in the afternoon light. He had the kind of face that suggested stories, not dramatic ones, necessarily, but the quiet kind that accumulate over years of careful living. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and worry, and something about the set of his shoulders suggested he carried more weight than was visible. I pushed open the door, and the smell of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon enveloped me like a warm embrace. Alex looked up at the sound of the bell and waved, his face breaking into that same transformative smile from the night before. "You made it," he said as I approached the table, and there was genuine pleasure in his voice. "I took the liberty of ordering for you. Hope you don't mind. You seem like a coffee with cream kind of person." I sat down across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic mug. "Good guess. Thanks for getting here early and snagging us a table." "Honestly, I was just too restless to wait at home any longer." Alex laughed, but there was something self-conscious about it. "I don't do this much. The whole meeting new people thing, I mean. Makes 2 of us." I took a sip of the coffee and found it was exactly how I liked it, hot and smooth with just enough cream to take the edge off the bitterness. This is really good, actually. I know, right? I've been working my way through all the coffee shops in the neighborhood since I moved here. This one's definitely in the top 3. Alex wrapped his hands around his own mug, and I noticed his fingers were long and slightly ink-stained, like someone who still preferred to write things down by hand. "So you teach music? That must be rewarding." "Most days." I found myself relaxing despite my earlier nerves. There was something about Alex's presence that invited honesty. "I work with kids mostly, ages 8 to 16. Some of them have real talent, others are just fulfilling a parental requirement, but they keep me grounded, I guess." "What do you mean?" I considered the question. surprised to find myself wanting to give a real answer instead of the polite deflection I usually offered. When you're performing, especially in clubs and bars, it's easy to get lost in the performance aspect of it all. Playing for an audience, reading the room, giving people what they want to hear. But with kids, they don't care about any of that. They just want to learn how to make something beautiful with their hands. It reminds me why I fell in love with music in the first place. Alex nodded slowly, like he was really considering what I'd said. That's actually beautiful. I never thought about it that way, but it makes perfect sense. You get to see music through fresh eyes every day. Something like that. I took another sip of coffee, studying his face. What about you? You mentioned you work from home. Software engineer. I develop applications for small businesses, inventory management, customer databases, that kind of thing. He grimaced slightly. Not nearly as interesting as what you do, but it pays the bills and lets me work in my pajamas if I want to. Did you always know you wanted to do that? God, no. I sort of fell into it in college when I needed a part-time job and discovered I was actually decent with computers. Turned out I like solving puzzles, and that's basically what programming is, finding elegant solutions to complicated problems. Alex paused, seeming to weigh his next words. What about you? Always a musician? Since I was 7, my mom signed me up for piano lessons thinking it would keep me busy after school, and I just took to it, I guess. Never really wanted to do anything else, even when everyone told me I should have a backup plan. I found myself smiling at the memory. I still remember the first song I learned to play all the way through, Für Elisa. I must have played it 1,000 times that first month. Beethoven, right? That's a beautiful piece. Alex's eyes lit up with what looked like genuine interest. Do you still play it sometimes? Every now and then, when I'm feeling nostalgic or when one of my students is struggling with it, it's like comfort food, but for piano. Alex laughed, and the sound was warm and unguarded. Comfort food for piano. I love that. I might have to steal that phrase. We fell into an easy rhythm after that, trading stories about our respective moves to Chicago. His from Seattle just 2 months ago, mine from a smaller Illinois town nearly 10 years back. Alex talked about missing the mountains and the coffee culture, but loving the energy of the city, the way there was always something happening if you knew where to look. I found myself telling him about my favorite spots in Lincoln Park, the little jazz clubs that felt like home, the late-night diners where the waitresses knew my order by heart. You sound like you really love it here, Alex observed, and there was something wistful in his voice. I do. It took some time. The first few years were rough, actually, but Chicago has this way of growing on you, like it's slowly making room for you to become who you're supposed to be. I paused, surprised by my own words. I'd never articulated that feeling before, but sitting across from Alex, it felt important to try. That's exactly what I'm hoping for, he said quietly. In Seattle, I always felt like I was trying to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. Here, I don't know anyone's expectations yet, so maybe I can just figure out what mine are. There was something in the way he said it that made me want to ask more, but before I could, Alex was glancing at his watch. I can't believe it's already 5:30. Time really flew. I looked around the cafe, surprised to see that the late afternoon crowd had thinned out considerably while we'd been talking. It did. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to monopolize your whole afternoon. Are you kidding? This has been the highlight of my week, month even. Alex's cheeks flushed slightly as soon as the words were out, like he hadn't meant to be quite so honest. I mean, mine too, I said quickly, wanting to save him from whatever backpedal he was about to attempt. Really, it's been really nice to just talk to someone. We sat there for a moment, neither of us moving to leave despite the fact that we'd both finished our coffee. There was something unfinished about the afternoon, like a song that had been building toward a resolution that hadn't quite arrived yet. Would you maybe want to do this again sometime? Alex asked finally, his voice careful. Coffee, I mean, or dinner, or, I don't know, whatever people do in Chicago for fun. I'd like that. A lot, actually. I stood up, reaching for my jacket, and Alex did the same. As we maneuvered around the small table, his arm brushed against mine. Barely a touch, really, but it sent a small shock of awareness through me that I tried to ignore. We walked outside together, the January cold immediately nipping at our faces. The sun was already low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, and there was something about the quality of the light that made the moment feel suspended, like we were existing in the space between day and evening, between strangers and something more. "Which way are you headed?" Alex asked, pulling his scarf tighter around his neck. "Home, actually. You?" "Same." He smiled. "I guess we can walk together, at least until we get to our building." We fell into step beside each other, our breath visible in small puffs as we navigated the sidewalk. I found myself hyper-aware of the space between us, close enough that I could catch his scent again, that same combination of coffee and cedar that seemed to cling to his clothes, but not so close that we risked accidentally touching. "Can I ask you something?" Alex said as we turned onto our street. "Sure." "Last night, when I asked about coffee, you looked surprised. Not like surprised a stranger is talking to me surprised, but more like—" He trailed off, seeming to search for the right words. "Like you couldn't believe someone would want to spend time with you." And I can't understand that. You're interesting and talented and easy to talk to. So I guess what I'm asking is, are you always that surprised when people want to get to know you better? The question caught me completely off guard. We were stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, and I found myself staring at the glowing red hand across the street while I tried to formulate an answer. "I guess I don't put myself in situations where that happens very often," I said finally. Work, home, work, home. Not a lot of room for this. I gestured vaguely between us. "Why not?" The light changed and we started across the street. Alex's question hung in the cold air between us, simple but loaded with implications I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. "I don't know," I lied, because the real answer was too complicated for a first coffee date. Because I'd tried putting myself out there before, and it had ended with someone systematically dismantling my confidence until I barely recognized myself. Because it was easier to be lonely than to risk that kind of devastation again. Because I'd gotten comfortable with solitude, the way you get comfortable with chronic pain. Not pleasant exactly, but familiar. Alex nodded like he understood there was more to the story, but he didn't push. We walked the rest of the way to our building in comfortable silence, and it wasn't until we were standing in front of the entrance that I realized I didn't want the afternoon to end. "Thank you," I said as Alex held the door open for me. "For today, I mean. It was really nice. Thank you for saying yes." We climbed the stairs to the 4th floor together, our footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. "I was fully prepared for you to think I was some weird neighbor guy and politely decline." "I did think you might be weird," I admitted, and Alex laughed. "But the good kind of weird, if that makes sense." "Perfect. Good weird is exactly what I was going for." We reached the 4th floor and paused in the hallway between our doors. The fluorescent light overhead flickered intermittently, casting shifting shadows across Alex's face. He had his keys out, but he wasn't making any move toward his door. "So," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice even though the light was too dim to see it clearly. "Same time next week?" "I'd like that." I pulled out my own keys, suddenly reluctant to end whatever this was. "Maybe we could try that Thai place on Clark Street. I've been meaning to check it out." "It's a date," Alex said, then immediately caught himself. "I mean, I know what you mean," I said, echoing his words from the night before. But this time, there was something different in the way I said it, something that made Alex pause with his key halfway to the lock. We looked at each other across the narrow hallway, and I felt something shift between us, subtle but unmistakable, like the moment when a song moves from one key to another. The air felt charged with possibility, with all the things we weren't quite saying yet. Julian. Alex's voice was softer now, almost hesitant. Yeah? I'm really glad you dropped your headphones last night. I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. Me too. Alex smiled, and this time I could see it clearly despite the dim light. He turned toward his door, then paused and looked back at me. You know, if you ever want to play piano and don't mind an audience of one, my walls are pretty thin. I'd love to hear more than just the muffled versions I get through the drywall. Careful what you wish for, I said, but I was smiling too. I practice scales a lot. It's not always pretty. I bet it's prettier than you think. I stood there watching as Alex unlocked his door and stepped inside, turning back to give me one last wave before closing it softly behind him. I remained in the hallway for a moment longer, keys in hand, trying to process the strange lightness I felt in my chest. Inside my apartment, I went straight to the piano without even taking off my jacket. My fingers found the keys automatically, picking out a melody I'd been working on for weeks but had never been able to get quite right. Tonight, though, the notes seemed to flow more easily, like something had loosened inside me over coffee and conversation. I played for nearly an hour, losing myself in the music in a way I hadn't in months. It wasn't until I heard a soft knock on the wall that separated my apartment from Alex's, that I realized how late it had gotten. I stopped playing, my hands poised over the keys, and listened. After a moment, there was another knock, slower this time, almost rhythmic. Without really thinking about it, I knocked back, matching his rhythm. We went back and forth like that for a few minutes, a strange, wordless conversation through drywall and plaster. Finally, the knocking stopped, and I heard the faint sound of Alex's laughter from the other side of the wall. I went to bed that night with a smile on my face for the first time in longer than I cared to admit. The week that followed was different somehow. Not dramatically different. I still taught my lessons, still played my evening gigs, still maintained my carefully constructed routine. But there was something new woven through the familiar patterns of my days, a low-level anticipation that made even mundane moments feel charged with possibility. On Tuesday, I heard Alex moving around in his apartment when I got home from work, and I found myself standing still in my kitchen, listening to the sounds of his life just a few feet away. The soft thud of footsteps, the distant sound of running water, the faint hum of what might have been music playing from his computer. It was intimate in a way that made me feel like I was eavesdropping, but I couldn't quite make myself move away from the wall. Wednesday brought a snowstorm that blanketed the city in pristine white, transforming Lincoln Park into something from a postcard. I spent the morning teaching lessons to students who kept glancing out the window at the falling flakes instead of focusing on their fingering, and I couldn't blame them. There was something magical about the first heavy snow of the season, the way it muffled all the usual city sounds and made the world feel hushed and expectant. That evening, as I was walking home from a gig at Murphy's Pub, I spotted a familiar figure ahead of me on the sidewalk. Alex was trudging through the snow with what looked like a bag of groceries, his dark coat dusted with white flakes. I quickened my pace to catch up with him. "Hey, stranger," I called out when I was close enough. Alex turned and his face lit up when he saw me. "Julian!" Perfect timing. I was just thinking about you. Good things, I hope. The best. Alex shifted his grocery bag to his other arm, and I caught a glimpse of what looked like ingredients for actual cooking, rather than the frozen dinners and takeout containers that comprised most of my nutritional intake. "I heard you playing earlier. That new piece you've been working on? You could hear it?" I felt heat creep up my neck despite the cold. "Sorry, I know it's probably annoying when you're trying to work." "Are you kidding? It's the best background music I've ever had," made debugging code almost pleasant. Alex paused at the entrance to our building, fumbling for his keys with his free hand. Actually, I've been wondering, would you maybe want to have dinner tomorrow night? I mean, I could cook something, if you're interested. Nothing fancy, just it might be nice to eat a meal with another human being for once. I stared at him, snow collecting on my eyelashes, trying to process the invitation. Dinner. At his place. The implications felt enormous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. You cook? I asked, because it seemed safer than addressing any of the other thoughts crowding my brain. I do. I'm not Gordon Ramsay or anything, but I can manage a decent pasta dish without burning down the kitchen. Alex's cheeks were pink from the cold, and there was something endearingly nervous about the way he was shifting his weight from foot to foot. Of course, if you'd rather stick to restaurants, I totally understand. I know having dinner at someone's apartment can feel like a big step when you're just getting to know them. No, I stopped, surprised by how much I wanted to say yes. I'd love that, actually. What time? The relief that crossed Alex's face was profound. 7? I promise I'll have you fed and back home at a reasonable hour. It's a deal. I followed him into the building, shaking snow off my jacket. Can I bring anything? Wine? Dessert? Just yourself. And maybe your appetite. I have a tendency to cook for 4 people even when it's just me eating. We climbed the stairs together, and I found myself studying the line of Alex's shoulders under his coat, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck where it had gotten damp from the snow. There was something about the domestic nature of the invitation that felt both intimate and terrifying. Coffee in a public place was one thing, but dinner in his apartment crossed some invisible line I hadn't even realized I'd been drawing. Alex? I said as we reached our floor. Yeah? Thank you. For asking, I mean. It's been a long time since someone wanted to cook for me. Alex paused with his key in the lock, turning to look at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It's been a long time since I wanted to cook for anyone. We looked at each other across the narrow hallway, and I felt that same shift in the air that had happened after our coffee date, like we were acknowledging something without putting it into words. Finally, Alex cleared his throat. Well, I should probably get this stuff in the fridge before it spoils. See you tomorrow? 7 o'clock, I confirmed, and watched him disappear into his apartment before I remembered to unlock my own door. I spent far too much time the next day thinking about what to wear to dinner with Alex. It was ridiculous. We were neighbors, after all, not strangers meeting for the first time. But every time I tried to dismiss my nerves as silly, I'd remember the way he'd looked at me in the hallway, the careful way he'd phrased his invitation, and my stomach would flutter with anticipation. By 6:30, I'd settled on dark jeans and a burgundy sweater that I'd been told brought out my eyes, though I couldn't remember who had told me that or when. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror, ran my fingers through my hair, and tried to convince myself that I wasn't overthinking everything. At exactly 7 o'clock, I knocked on Alex's door. He opened it almost immediately, like he'd been waiting just on the other side, and I was struck again by how handsome he was, especially now, in his own space, wearing a soft gray Henley that clung to his shoulders in a way that made my mouth go dry. Perfect timing, he said, stepping aside to let me in. I just finished setting the table. Alex's apartment was a mirror image of mine in terms of layout, but it felt completely different. Where my place was sparse and functional, his was warm and lived in. Bookshelves lined one wall, crammed with everything from programming manuals to what looked like poetry collections. A small dining table had been set for 2 with actual cloth napkins and wine glasses that caught the light from the overhead fixture. The whole place smelled incredible. Garlic and herbs and something rich and tomatoey that made my stomach growl audibly. "This smells amazing," I said, shrugging out of my jacket. Alex took it from me and hung it in the small closet by the door, and the casual domesticity of the gesture made something flutter in my chest. Chicken cacciatore. It's one of the few dishes I've actually mastered. Alex led me toward the kitchen where I could see a pot simmering on the stove and what looked like fresh bread cooling on a cutting board. I hope you're hungry. Starving, actually. I leaned against the counter, watching as Alex stirred the contents of the pot with easy familiarity. This is really nice of you. I can't remember the last time someone made me a home-cooked meal. Well, don't get too excited until you taste it. I might have gotten overconfident with the seasoning. Alex glanced over at me, and there was something shy about his smile. Wine? I opened a bottle of Chianti. Seemed appropriate for the menu. Please. Alex poured 2 glasses of deep red wine and handed one to me, our fingers brushing briefly as I took it. The touch was electric, sending a small shock up my arm that I tried to ignore. To new neighbors, Alex said, raising his glass. To new neighbors, I echoed, and we clinked glasses softly. The wine was good, rich and smooth with just enough complexity to make it interesting. I took a sip and felt some of my nerves begin to settle. So, Alex said, turning back to the stove, how was your day? Any particularly challenging students? I laughed. Actually, yes. 8-year-old Emma decided that Mary Had a Little Lamb was beneath her artistic vision and spent the entire lesson trying to convince me to let her play Bohemian Rhapsody instead. Did you let her? God, no. But I did promise her we could work up to something more challenging if she masters her scales first. I took another sip of wine, feeling myself relax into the conversation. What about you? How's the world of software development treating you? Can't complain. Spent most of the day trying to debug an inventory system for a small bookstore chain. Very glamorous stuff. Alex grinned. Although I did get to take a break this afternoon to run to the market for dinner supplies, which felt surprisingly domestic and grown-up of me. Look at you, being a real adult with your home-cooked meals and your cloth napkins. I know, right? Next thing you know, I'll be buying throw pillows and caring about thread counts. Alex ladled the chicken onto 2 plates and added what looked like perfectly cooked rice and roasted vegetables. I hope you're ready for this culinary masterpiece. We sat down at Alex's small dining table, and I had to admit the food was genuinely delicious. The chicken was tender and flavorful, the sauce rich without being heavy, and everything was seasoned perfectly. More than that, though, was the simple pleasure of eating a meal with someone else, of having real conversation punctuated by the comfortable sounds of silverware against plates. This is really incredible, I said after my first few bites. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mom, actually. She insisted all her kids learn their way around a kitchen before we left home. Said she wasn't going to be responsible for sending helpless people out into the world. Alex smiled at what was clearly a fond memory. I fought it at the time, but I'm grateful now. Especially living alone. It's nice to be able to make something that actually tastes good. Your mom sounds wise. Mine tried to teach me, but I was always too impatient. I wanted to be practicing piano instead of learning how long to saute onions. I took another bite, savoring the complex flavors. I think I survive mainly on takeout and whatever I can throw together with minimal effort. Well, you're welcome to join me for dinner anytime you want a break from takeout. I actually enjoy cooking for other people more than just for myself. There was something in the way Alex said it that made me look up from my plate. He was watching me with an expression that was careful but hopeful, like he was testing the waters for something deeper than neighborly dinner invitations. I'd like that, I said quietly, more than you might realize. We finished dinner while talking about everything and nothing, favorite books, travel dreams, the peculiarities of Chicago weather. Alex refilled our wine glasses, and by the time we were clearing the plates, I felt loose-limbed and comfortable in a way I hadn't experienced in months. Leave those, Alex said when I started to help with the dishes. I'll deal with them later. Want to move to the living room? I have some excellent chocolate that's calling our names. I followed Alex to his couch, a comfortable-looking piece covered in soft gray fabric that had clearly been chosen for relaxation rather than style. He disappeared into the kitchen for a moment and returned with a bar of dark chocolate and our wine glasses. 70% cacao, he said, settling onto the couch next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, but not so close that we were actually touching. Fair trade, sustainably sourced, and absolutely delicious. He broke off a piece and handed it to me, and when I bit into it, the rich bitterness exploded across my tongue. Oh my God, that's incredible. Right? I discovered this brand when I lived in Seattle, and I may have packed an embarrassing amount of it when I moved here. Alex took a piece for himself, and I watched as he let it melt slowly on his tongue, his eyes closing in apparent bliss. There was something intensely sensual about watching Alex eat chocolate, something that made me acutely aware of his mouth, the way his throat moved when he swallowed. I forced myself to look away, focusing instead on the bookshelves that lined the opposite wall. You have a lot of poetry, I observed, grateful to have found a safe topic of conversation. Guilty pleasure, Alex said, and I could hear the slight embarrassment in his voice. I know it's not very practical, but there's something about the way poets use language that just gets to me, I guess. What's your favorite? Alex was quiet for a moment, like he was deciding whether to take the question seriously. Finally, he got up and pulled a slim volume from one of the shelves, well worn, with pages that looked soft from repeated handling. Mary Oliver, he said, settling back onto the couch. This is probably going to sound cheesy, but her work helped me through some pretty dark times a few years back. There's this one poem. He flipped through the pages, then stopped and cleared his throat. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Alex's voice was soft as he read, almost reverent, and something about the words combined with the wine and the intimacy of the moment made my chest tighten with emotion I wasn't prepared for. That's beautiful, I said, and meant it. She has this way of cutting right to the heart of things. No pretense, no unnecessary decoration, just truth distilled down to its essence. Alex closed the book and set it on the coffee table, then looked at me with an expression that was suddenly serious. Can I ask you something? Sure. Earlier this week, when we were talking about why you don't put yourself in situations to meet people, I got the feeling there was more to that story, and you don't have to tell me anything you don't want. The words hang in the air between us like morning mist, delicate and uncertain. You don't have to go yet, if you don't want to. Alex's voice is barely above a whisper, and I can hear the vulnerability beneath each syllable, the way his breath catches on the word want, as if he's afraid of what it might mean. I stand frozen in his doorway, one hand still gripping the doorframe, the other clutching my coffee mug like an anchor. The hallway behind me stretches into shadow, leading back to my own apartment, my own carefully constructed solitude. But here, in the warm glow spilling from Alex's living room, something pulls at me. Something I've been running from for longer than I care to admit. The rain continues its relentless percussion against the windows, each droplet a tiny drumbeat marking time. I've always found comfort in rain, the way it drowns out the world's sharp edges, makes everything soft and blurred. Tonight, it feels like permission. I ... The word emerges cracked and uncertain. I clear my throat, try again. I don't want to impose. Alex's eyes, those impossibly deep brown eyes that seem to hold entire conversations, search my face. There's a flicker of something there, hope maybe, or fear, perhaps both. You're not imposing. I wouldn't have asked if. He trails off, runs a hand through his dark hair, leaving it slightly mussed. The gesture is so unconsciously intimate that something tightens in my chest. I step back inside, closing the door with a soft click that feels unnaturally loud in the quiet apartment. The sound seems to seal something between us, though I'm not sure what. The air feels different now, charged with possibility and the weight of unspoken things. "Your coffee's getting cold," Alex observes, nodding toward the mug in my hands. His smile is tentative, like he's testing the waters of this new dynamic between us. I look down at the forgotten coffee, steam no longer rising from its surface. Right. Coffee. The words feel foreign on my tongue, like I've forgotten how normal conversation works. "Do you have any left?" "Of course." He's already moving toward the kitchen, and I follow, my sock-clad feet silent on the hardwood floor. The kitchen is small but well organized, evidence of someone who finds comfort in order. Copper pots hang from hooks, their surfaces reflecting the warm, under-cabinet lighting. Everything has its place, carefully considered and deliberately arranged. I lean against the counter, watching as Alex refills both our mugs. His movements are precise, economical, but there's a slight tremor in his hands that makes my heart squeeze. When he turns back to face me, offering the refreshed cup, our fingers brush during the exchange. The contact is brief, electric, and we both pretend not to notice the way it makes us pause. "Should we—" Alex gestures vaguely toward the living room, and I nod, following him back to the couch where we'd sat earlier. But this time, the distance between us feels more pronounced, more deliberate. We're both hyper-aware of the space, of the careful way we arrange ourselves on opposite ends of the cushions. The silence stretches between us, not uncomfortable exactly, but loaded with potential. I cradle my coffee mug, using its warmth to ground myself, and steal glances at Alex over the rim. He's staring out the window at the rain-streaked glass, his profile outlined by the soft lamplight. There's something almost sculptural about the line of his jaw, the way shadows pool beneath his cheekbones. "I don't do this," I find myself saying, the words tumbling out before I can stop them. "Stay. Talk to people. Any of it." Alex turns toward me, his expression gentle. "What changed tonight?" The question hangs between us, honest and direct. I take a sip of coffee, buying time, tasting the rich bitterness on my tongue. What did change? When did the walls I've spent years carefully constructing start to feel less like protection and more like a prison? "I don't know," I admit finally. "Maybe I'm tired of being alone." The confession feels dangerous, too raw, too honest for someone I barely know. But Alex doesn't flinch from it. Instead, he nods slowly, understanding flickering across his features. "I moved here 6 months ago," he says quietly. "From Seattle. I thought a change of scenery would help, that I could become someone different in a new city." He laughs softly, but there's no humor in it. "Turns out, you take yourself with you wherever you go." I know that feeling intimately, the hope that geography might somehow transform you, that crossing state lines might leave your ghosts behind. "What were you running from?" He's quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands wrapped around his mug. "A relationship that broke me in ways I didn't even realize until it was over. Someone who convinced me that love meant changing yourself until you disappeared entirely." His voice drops to barely above a whisper. "I was with her for 3 years, and by the end, I couldn't remember who I'd been before." The pronoun lands softly but distinctly in the space between us. Her. I feel something shift inside me, a recognition that runs deeper than words. We're both carrying histories that shaped us, molded us into these careful, guarded versions of ourselves. She told me I was too sensitive, too emotional, that real men didn't cry over movies or care about whether flowers bloomed in spring. He looks up at me then, eyes bright with unshed tears. I started believing her, started cutting away pieces of myself until there was almost nothing left. I want to reach for him, to bridge the distance between us, but my hands remain frozen around my mug. Instead, I offer the only thing I can, my own truth. Mine was a man, I say simply. David. We were together for 2 years, and he spent most of that time convincing me I was lucky he put up with me. That no one else would ever want someone so... I search for the words David used to use, feeling them scrape against my throat. Difficult. Needy. Broken. Alex's knuckles whiten around his coffee cup. How long ago? 4 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes like a lifetime. I set my mug down on the coffee table, needing to free my hands even if I don't know what to do with them. I don't really date anymore. Don't trust myself to recognize the warning signs. Or you don't trust yourself to believe you deserve better, Alex says softly, and the accuracy of it hits me like a physical blow. We sit with that for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between us. Outside, the rain has intensified, drumming against the windows with renewed urgency. The sound creates a cocoon around us, making the rest of the world feel distant and unreal. Can I ask you something? Alex's voice is careful, hesitant. I nod, though my heart rate picks up. When you look at me, what do you see? The question catches me off guard. I study his face, really look at him, the way the lamplight catches the gold flecks in his brown eyes, the slight curl to his dark hair, the vulnerability written in the set of his shoulders. But it's more than that, something harder to name. I see someone who's been hurt, but hasn't let it make him cruel, I say slowly. Someone who still believes in kindness, even when he's been given reasons not to. Someone who makes really good coffee and has books arranged by color instead of author, which should be chaotic, but somehow feels like poetry. A smile tugs at the corner of his mouth, small but genuine. You noticed the books. I notice everything about you, I admit, then immediately feel heat flood my cheeks. I know what you meant. His voice is warm, understanding. And for the record, when I look at you, I see someone who carries music with him everywhere he goes. Not just because you're a pianist, but because there's something about you that moves like melody, something that makes me want to listen closer. The words hit me somewhere deep and unguarded, in a place I've kept carefully locked away. I feel tears prick at my eyes and blink them back, not ready for that level of exposure. God, I breathe, running a hand through my hair. We're a pair, aren't we? A pair of what? Broken things learning how to be whole again. Alex is quiet for a moment, considering. Maybe we're not broken, he says finally. Maybe we're just careful. Maybe we're exactly who we're supposed to be, scars and all. I look at him then, really look, and something inside me shifts. The careful distance I've been maintaining suddenly feels unnecessary, a habit rather than a need. Without overthinking it, I slide closer on the couch, closing some of the space between us. Alex notices immediately, his breath catching slightly, but he doesn't pull away. If anything, he seems to relax, as if proximity is a relief rather than a threat. Is this okay? I ask, because consent matters, because we've both been in places where our boundaries weren't respected. It's okay, he says softly. More than okay. We sit like that for a while, close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating from his body, catch the subtle scent of his soap, something clean and woodsy that makes me want to lean closer. Our knees are almost touching, separated by mere inches that feel simultaneously insignificant and monumental. Tell me something else, I say, because I want to know him, all of him. Something that has nothing to do with pain. Alex smiles, the first truly unguarded expression I've seen from him tonight. I collect vintage postcards, he admits. Not for any particular reason, I just love the idea of all these small messages people sent to each other over the years, brief glimpses into ordinary lives, ordinary love. That's beautiful. What about you? What's something that makes you happy? I think for a moment, digging past the surface-level answers to something real. Rain, I say finally. Specifically the sound it makes against windows when you're somewhere warm and dry. It makes me feel held somehow, like the world is taking care of itself and I can just exist in the moment. As if summoned by my words, a particularly strong gust of wind drives rain against the glass, and we both turn toward the sound. When I look back at Alex, he's watching me with something like wonder. "You really do carry music with you," he murmurs. "The way you describe things, it's like listening to poetry." The compliment settles warm in my chest, unfamiliar but welcome. My ex used to say I talked too much, that I should just get to the point instead of painting pictures with words. "Your ex was an idiot," Alex says with sudden fierceness that surprises us both. He flushes slightly. "Sorry, anyone who would want to silence something beautiful like that." "Thank you," I whisper, and I mean it. When was the last time someone called the way I see the world beautiful instead of excessive? We're sitting even closer now, though I'm not sure when that happened. The shift feels natural, inevitable, like water finding its level. Alex's hand is resting on the couch cushion between us, fingers spread wide, and I find myself studying the elegant length of them, the way they tap out silent rhythms against the fabric. "Julian?" His voice is barely above a whisper. "Yeah? I'm glad you stayed." The simple words hit me with unexpected force. When was the last time someone was glad for my presence? When did I stop believing that people might actually want me around? Me too, I admit. And it's true in a way that startles me. Something shifts in the air between us then. A subtle change in pressure that makes my skin feel more sensitive, more aware. Alex's eyes have grown darker, or maybe it's just the way the lamplight plays across his features. I can see the pulse at his throat, quick and unsteady, matching my own racing heartbeat. "Can I—" he starts, then stops, uncertainty flickering across his face. "What?" "Can I touch you?" "Just." He gestures vaguely. "Your hand." "I just want to know if you're real." The request is so gentle, so careful, that it makes my throat tight. I nod, not trusting my voice, and watch as he slowly reaches out. His fingertips brush across my knuckles first, light as butterfly wings, before his palm settles warm against the back of my hand. The contact is electric, sending ripples of sensation up my arm. I turn my hand over, palm up, and our fingers interlace with breathtaking naturalness. His skin is warm, slightly rough from some kind of work I don't know about yet, and holding his hand feels like coming home to a place I've never been. We sit like that, hands joined, breathing synchronized, as the rain continues its gentle assault on the windows. The silence between us has transformed from careful to companionable, heavy with possibility, but not demanding anything more than this moment. "I haven't held someone's hand in 4 years," Alex confesses quietly, his thumb tracing gentle circles across my knuckles. "Neither have I." The admission feels significant, a small surrender of the armor I've been wearing. I forgot how good it could feel. Just human connection. Skin against skin. Proof that you're not alone in the world. I squeeze his hand gently, and he responds in kind. It's a conversation conducted entirely in pressure and warmth, more honest than words. Time becomes fluid. We could have been sitting there for minutes or hours. The rain creates a timeless cocoon that makes the outside world feel distant and irrelevant. At some point, Alex shifts closer, or maybe I do, until our shoulders are touching, and I can feel his breath against my temple. "This is nice," he murmurs, and I can hear the smile in his voice. "It is." I lean into the contact slightly, testing boundaries, finding only acceptance. I don't want it to end. It doesn't have to. Not tonight. The words carry weight beyond their surface meaning, an invitation to exist in this space we've created together for as long as we need. I close my eyes, letting myself sink into the feeling of being close to another person without fear, without the constant calculation of what they might want from me. Alex? What you said earlier about not recognizing yourself, do you feel more like yourself now? Here? With me? He's quiet for so long I wonder if I've overstepped, pushed too hard. But when he speaks, his voice is steady and sure. Yeah, I do. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The confession breaks something open inside me, some last bastion of resistance I've been clinging to. I turn toward him fully, studying his profile in the warm lamplight. There's a peace in his expression I haven't seen before, a softness that transforms his entire face. Me too, I whisper. He turns then, meeting my eyes, and the air between us shifts again. We're close enough that I can count his eyelashes, see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, notice the way his lips part slightly when he's thinking. The hand not holding mine comes up to rest gently against my cheek, and I lean into the touch without thinking. Julian, he breathes, my name sounding different in his voice, more precious somehow. Yeah. I want to kiss you. But only if... Yes. The word escapes before he can finish the question, raw with want and certainty. Please. The kiss, when it comes, is nothing like I expected. It's hesitant at first, questioning, our lips barely brushing as if we're both afraid to break whatever spell has settled over us. But then Alex's hand tightens slightly against my cheek and I press closer, and suddenly we're kissing with the desperate tenderness of two people who've forgotten what connection feels like. His lips are soft, warm, tasting faintly of coffee and something uniquely him. When he deepens the kiss slightly, I open to him willingly, our tongues meeting in a gentle dance that makes my head spin. There's no urgency, no demand, just pure, honest desire tempered by careful reverence. When we finally break apart, we don't go far. Our foreheads rest together, breathing mingled, hands still clasped between us. I can feel the quick flutter of his pulse where our wrists touch, matching the frantic rhythm of my own heart. That was... I start, then lose the words. Yeah, he agrees, understanding perfectly. We sit like that, foreheads touching, sharing breath and space and the quiet aftermath of something significant. The rain continues outside, but it feels different now, not lonely, but intimate, as if the storm is keeping the world at bay just for us. I should probably... I begin half-heartedly, though I make no move to pull away. Should what? Alex's voice is gentle, curious. Go back to my apartment, give you space. This is probably too much, too fast. His hand tightens around mine. Is that what you want? Or what you think you should want? The question stops me cold. What do I want? For so long, my wants have been filtered through other people's expectations, other people's comfort levels. When did I stop trusting my own desires? I want to stay, I admit quietly. I want to exist in this bubble we've created for a little while longer. But I don't want to assume... You're not assuming anything. His free hand comes up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead, the gesture so tender it makes my chest ache. I want you to stay too. Not for anything more than this. Just being together. Being less alone. The simplicity of it, the honest need in his voice undoes me completely. Okay, I'll stay. Relief washes over his features, quickly followed by something that might be joy. Good. I'm glad. He shifts on the couch, angling himself more comfortably, and I follow suit. We end up curled together on our sides, facing each other, hands still linked between us. It's intimate without being sexual, close without being overwhelming. It's perfect. Tell me something else, Alex murmurs, his voice soft and drowsy. Something happy. I think for a moment, watching the way the lamplight plays across his features. When I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, there was this old upright piano in my grandmother's basement. Horribly out of tune, missing half the keys, but I loved it anyway. I'd sneak down there when the adults were talking and just play. Nothing fancy, just making sounds that felt right together. That's when you knew? That's when I knew music was home. I pause, remembering. My grandmother found me down there one day. I thought I was in trouble, but she just sat and listened. When I finished, she said, "You have magic in your fingers, little one. Don't ever let anyone tell you to stop playing." Alex smiles, and I can see the affection in his eyes. She sounds wonderful. She was. She died when I was 15, left me that piano in her will. It's in my apartment now, restored and tuned. Sometimes I play for her, you know, like she's still listening. I bet she is, Alex says softly, and something in his voice tells me he really believes it. What about you? What made you fall in love with computers? He laughs quietly. It wasn't computers exactly. It was problem solving. I've always loved puzzles, figuring out how things work. Code is just another kind of language, and I like the idea that you can build entire worlds with nothing but logic and creativity. Do you build worlds? Sometimes. Mostly, I fix other people's worlds when they break. His thumb traces patterns across my knuckles as he speaks. But I've been working on something personal lately. A small game, nothing fancy, just something beautiful. Something that might make people feel less alone. The parallel isn't lost on me, both of us creating things designed to connect, to heal, to bridge the spaces between people. I'd love to see it sometime. I'd love to show you, and I'd love to hear you play. The real you, not performing for an audience, just you and the music. The idea of playing for him, of sharing that intimate part of myself should terrify me. Instead, it feels like a gift I want to give. I'd like that too. We fall into comfortable silence then, content to exist in this space we've carved out together. The rain has softened to a gentle patter, and the warm glow of the lamp creates a bubble of intimacy that feels separate from the rest of the world. I watch Alex's breathing slow and deepen, his face relaxing into sleep. He looks younger like this, peaceful in a way that makes my heart squeeze with unexpected tenderness. Our hands are still linked, and even in sleep his grip remains secure, as if he's afraid I might disappear. I should probably wake him, suggest we move to more comfortable sleeping arrangements. But I don't want to break the spell of this moment, don't want to introduce the complications that morning might bring. Instead, I let my own eyes drift closed, listening to the rain and Alex's steady breathing, feeling more at peace than I have in years. Just before sleep claims me completely, I feel Alex shift slightly, his free arm coming around me in a protective embrace. It should feel too fast, too intimate for whatever we are to each other. Instead, it feels like coming home. "Thank you," he murmurs against my hair, voice thick with sleep. "For what?" "For staying. For trusting me enough to stay." I press closer, letting myself sink into his warmth. "Thank you for asking me to." The last thing I'm aware of before sleep takes hold is the sound of rain against glass, gentle and steady, washing the world clean while we hold each other in the dark. Tomorrow will bring questions, complications, the need to define what this is and what it might become. But tonight, we're just two people who chose not to be alone, finding solace in shared warmth and the promise that morning, when it comes, might be a little less empty than the ones that came before. Outside, the rain continues, patient and persistent, carrying away the debris of yesterday and making space for whatever wants to grow.